Our project that we chose was the Animatronics project. So the main question we had to answer was, how do we make an animatronic model? We had a couple ideas, like a howling wolf or Mr. Wolf doing push-ups like at the football games, but howling wolf seemed too stereotypical. So we chose Mr. Wolf doing push-ups like at the football games.
Our initial design for the animatronic included a metal frame that we would put together using nuts and bolts. This design used a linear actuator, which is above in the slide, that basically pulls the strings that would be attached on the joints, and that would make the motion of a push-up. However, we found out that the metal frame was too heavy and the linear actuator was not powerful enough to pull the joints. So we ended up switching to a model made from Legos, from the Lego Mindstorm kit. And this design had motors and gears that would turn, and the gears turning at the shoulders would make the axle move around as a push-up. And we eventually used this design and refined it so it would look more like an actual push-up.
For the animatronic research project, we had to talk about the history of animatronics and a couple companies that use animatronics. So we started out finding out that in the 17th century, animatronics was pretty much born. It was born through cuckoo clocks and other simple devices like that. Modern animatronics come from the Walt Disney Company when Walt Disney started using animatronics in his movies and shows. So, as I said, the Walt Disney Company was one of the first companies that used animatronics. One of the very famous examples is the bird that comes in the Spoonful of Sugar song from Mary Poppins. Universal Studios also used an animatronic Jaws to fully bring the experience into their Jaws ride at Universal Studios. Another company is called P&P Projects. It's a Dutch company that has created hundreds of projects, but one of their more famous ones is called Joris and Draak. It is for an amusement park in Germany.
So the first design had a metal frame and solenoid, and while working with the metal frame, we found that it would be easier to switch to Lego. While working with the Lego frame, the solenoid kept using the batteries too quickly, and we found that using a motor from the kit that would attach to the Legos easily would be more effective. So the motor that we used had to be pushed back more so it would not get in the way of the spinning of the arms. So we had to make it longer, and then the rod that we used to keep the arms in place was too short, so we had to find a way to cap the ends of the rod to keep the legs from falling off. After that, we handed it over to someone that knew how to use fabric, and she put the fabric around it and had to make sure that the fabric did not get in the way of the gears, and had to fulfill our chosen idea. After that, we had to make sure that the head kept forward, because while testing, the head kept going backwards and it looked like it broke its neck.
But we had a lot of problems while testing. With the initial design, with the metal frame, we didn't have much success. Most of the failures in testing came from just not being able to move the animatronic the way we wanted it, and just not having enough power to actually get a full motion. However, once we switched to the Lego design, we got much better results, but there were still a few problems. For example, in this video, one of the many problems that were included was the arms and legs falling off. This was because the motion from the motor was too fast, so if at certain times even a small part became unscrewed, then the arm would fall off because it had no support. Some of the other problems were mostly after the fabric was put on, and those problems included like making sure the fabric didn't interfere with the motion and just not getting caught in the motors. So once we tested this, we were looking for a couple things. Most of the things we looked for were just how easily we could turn on and off the motion with a separate device that was wired to it. If it could continue for a long time without any interruptions, this was basically with respect to the fabric getting caught in the gears. So as long as the motion could continue and there was no major changes, that was what we were looking for. And if the animatronic lost any parts while in motion, as we saw in the video, it needed to keep all its parts in order to keep moving. And even if it was a small part that we didn't notice, that would mess up with the motion.
So the first iteration, the solenoid consumed too much power for the frame that we were using, so we switched to a lighter frame, but it still consumed too much power. So for our second iteration, we decided to use Lego. The Lego was good for the power consumption, but we couldn't make as big of a design, and the Lego was not as sturdy as we had hoped.
We had everything tested and made sure it worked. We brought a trifold and the actual animatronic to FEDD Day. And I was actually at FEDD Day, I just wasn't there when they took the pictures, but it's photoshopped in.
At FEDD Day, we were able to talk to a ton of people about how we got an idea for our project and how we worked on it. We also received an honorable mention for placing in 4th for the animatronics category in the afternoon session. One of the things that we had to answer on this presentation was, what would we do differently? And our group came up with a couple ideas, so we wanted to try to have the physics worked out of our first design before actually trying to build it and then realizing it was too heavy. One of the group members said that she had wished that she could take more pictures with their group and of the project on FEDD Day. And we also wanted to document the design process more clearly to explain what we did. Our advice for incoming freshmen is to have your mechanics done 2 weeks ahead of time to leave room for decorations and testing. Don't sit quietly if you think you have an idea that might work, but don't get upset if your group doesn't like the idea. Take more pictures. FEDD Day doesn't last as long as you think it will. And don't look at other people's projects because you will feel intimidated on FEDD Day.